Hello and welcome to Resolve, an after-play show. This is an after show for a role-playing game that does not have an actual play, where we tell you all the details of our game so you don't have to listen to it. I'm Sammie and I'll be your host. My pronouns are she, her, and I play Isiri, the mermaid. Joining me is my wonderful co-host, Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex. My pronouns are he, him, and I play Moogle mercenary Smog and his companion, a Malboro named Juice. Both use he, him pronouns.
And we are joined today by Carolyn.
I'm Carolyn, pronoun she, her. I play a miniature Falabella horse named Poni, who is under the impression that she is actually a unicorn.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Now that we're all here, Alex, why don't you tell us about the actual play?
Previously, in EFFETE's second session, Tau, Thompson, and Smog investigate the flare blast site for people. Smog uses magic to teleport them, with a stowaway, to Thompson's charging station. Hound 5, Isiri, and Poni teleport to a strange room after touching an orb. Poni tackles a humanoid, Toroid. He claims to be responsible for sending the transportation orb. Geyser disrupts Strider pilots and controls a leg. Athenos reaches the city and reverts to his smaller form. Geyser and Athenos follow Aura into the city. The stowaway introduces herself as Powder, claiming she gave instructions to Thompson. She tells him about the captain, a prophet who anticipated the success of an experiment that brought them there. She takes them to the development wing. Isiri displays a powerful illusion in an elevator as Toroid and Hound 5 escort her and Poni to the same location. Geyser badgers Aura for a Strider, while they also escort their entities there. Geyser, Isiri, Poni, and Athenos meet in a chamber. Athenos mistakes Isiri for a siren. Geyser tries to trick Poni with a ring toss, but Poni is too wary. Powder, Tau, and Smog enter the room. And, previously in the third session of EFFETE, Juice drops down from the ceiling and joins Smog. Tau plans a show for the captain's arrival. An old man named Sierra joins the group with Aura and the team. The team assembles a tank for Isiri. Another team brings food for Isiri and Poni, which Juice and Smog bum from. Sierra activates a room lift and shows the party the tide coming in through a floor window. Sierra takes a swig from his bottle. Geyser fails to feed on hate despite many contentious interactions. Smog attempts to teach Poni wind magic. Sierra explains that part of this world's moon-fell planet side in its rotation around the sun has stopped. He collapses, drunk. Powder and Aura have a team retrieve him to sober him up. And that was the actual play as I saw it.
So now that you've heard the actual play, let's do a deep dive into the actual session. So, starting off, we're all still separated. We're all still out in the desert. We're all still sort of getting our bearings into the situation we've been thrown into. And immediately we get to see Smog bearing the consequences of his actions by running into the character Powder. What does Smog feel about Powder and that whole chain of events?
So the situation with Powder is so funny to me because Smog made this assumption that because things looked shitty in this canyon where he is, where he can't see much of anything else, that this whole place must be deserted. There's a robot scavenging for stuff. Humans must have fucked it up. And then they go to investigate this place because they saw somebody dodge out from it. Don't really see anyone except Smog, who notices someone else who seems to be pointing something at him. And he's like, oh, fuck, we gotta get out. and shoots his dark portal, teleport anywhere move to try to get them out. And Powder just tags along anyway. Really?
You know, sometimes you see a wonderful portal appear in front of you, and you just have the divine urge to jump inside and see what the hell happens. So I can't fault Powder for that choice, but the levels of unknowns there, you're certainly taking a risk with that.
But then you also have the FOMO, fear of missing out. What if beyond the portal there's something really, really cool?
Well, the whole thing was she thought that it was the same sort of transportation that Poni and Isiri got. And if she didn't latch onto it, she was going to be stuck out there or have to walk back. So it's like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense now that we have this other group we're looking at. I mean, as far as the character herself, Smog was enamored. He's like, you're another bounty hunter. We can be friends. Tell me who to capture or kill or maim or whatever you need. She's like, oh, I don't need all that right now.
Right now. I can't wait to see when she does require that.
Smog will be on duty.
How eager is Smog to jump? Like, he's obviously a mercenary. He takes that mantle very well. What do you think Smog would run into that he just wouldn't want to just like put up with?
As far as a job, it's hard because outside of the context of his own world, he won't care too much. But if there are like godlike beings that he's put to the task of dealing with, if he had to be an actual JRPG protagonist, I don't think he'd be in for it. He's not all for the we must destroy all the gods and redo the regime sort of work.
And then for me and you, Carolyn, because Isiri and Poni were together, Hound 5 received like some sort of message or whatever, and then we got the teleportation orb, the one that was native to the planet that we're on. Isiri's just like, I don't like that. That makes me feel weird because she's part shark, so she has like electro sense, and this thing is just like a screaming orb of shoddily clad together electro technology. So she's like, I don't like that. What was Poni's reaction to all of that sci-fi nonsense?
Poni was a little bit curious. She did not like the orb, but Hound said to follow it, and Hound is quadrupedal, so they did follow it. And then we got to meet someone very special, didn't we?
We did. We ended up with our new best friend, Toroid.
All my homies hate Toroid.
This poor guy, I pity him so much because he's just a computer jockey, essentially. He runs the like teleportation system on the planet, and a horse and a mermaid come in and just absolutely ruin his afternoon.
Poni headbutts him behind the knee so he falls backwards. Imagine, have you ever seen those compilation videos of goats at petting zoos just taking out dads and moms? Very similar vibes.
And then my fish like just sits on them with her wet body, and it's just like he can't move. He's trapped because you have a several ton animal just sitting on you.
You're gonna need to give us a link to one of those so that we can put it in the episode description.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Oh man.
But this poor guy, he's just like, he's trying to do his job. Both of us just scare the ever-living hell out of him. He's like, all right, well, I can take you someplace to get help, but, you know, you gotta get off of me. And we're just like, no, we're gonna do terrible things to you.
No getting off, only leading us where we need to go.
Yeah, because, you know, we're both plopped into this strange situation, and we don't know who to trust. And not that Isiri didn't have malicious intent. She was just trying to get more information out of this guy. I don't know if Poni had malicious intent.
She did not. Well, she wasn't trying to hurt him. She just accepted that he might need to get hurt in order for her to get what she wanted.
So I love that Toroid was just like, I just teleported you here. I did not get you to this world proper. I just got you out of the desert. Please stop terrorizing me and go to the people you actually need to see. And you would not take it.
No. Because in Isiri's mind, she's trying to piece everything together, right? So this could be, you know, a curse. This could be, you know, punishment, something that's, you know, for all the things she's been, quote unquote, believes she's been doing wrong in her world. And now she's here. So she's like, she's trying to place the blame is what I told myself. And Toroid was the first person who seemed like they had control or knowledge of the situation. A frustration just gets compiled onto him, which is unfair entirely. And I think she's regretting it now because, you know, we did some rolls and I failed a roll and Dan forced me to take a light link with him, which means I look upon him more favorably or friendly. So I think Isiri, the next time she runs into him, is probably going to be regretful and apologetic to Toroid.
Poni kept trying to figure out who he worked for. She kept asking him, like, who is giving you commands? Why do you feel the need to follow these commands? Because she is newly her own pony. She does not jump through hoops anymore. Part of it is she doesn't think anyone else should, but also part of it is, okay, this is just one of the lower clowns. How do I get to the ringleader who actually got us into this situation?
Yeah, what were your thoughts at that point in character about what was going on? Did you think you were taken maliciously?
Poni didn't really have any thoughts on why she was taken. She just knew she was taken. She didn't really care because the end result was she was somewhere she didn't want to be. She just wanted to return to her wood and to her journey.
Yeah, I feel like we have an interesting mix of characters who are dead set on getting back home and where they need to be, and people who are fine being away from home.
It's not that I think Isiri really wants to go home, because, like, home for her is a very transient thing. She lives basically in what is the equivalent of an underwater desert. So she's kind of used to moving. It's just, I think in that beginning right there, she's like, I need to be able to make sure that I can maintain my life, because that is a serious problem. And as we sort of discover later, that there is a lot of water on this planet, it's just in a very strange situation. So I think now that she knows that, I think her curiosity probably is going to start taking over a bit more than like, oh shit, I gotta go back to what's right and what's proper. But I don't think she would like long term want to stay on this planet. I think she does want to go home, but for now she's starting to become more interested in, this is weird, I've never seen water do something like this. Why can't I dig around and see what else is going on here?
Yeah, for Smog, it's more like he'd already escaped home, and this is just another place that he'd escaped to. He thought that he was in the middle of one of his own forced transitions, shall we say, anyways. It's not quite like Geyser, where she seems happy to be free of some sort of sense of captivity, but I think that's probably the character he relates to most in that sense of being okay with being out of his original world.
Curious to see what Dex does with Athenos in this context, because I wonder if Athenos views this as like a place, ripe for building up a following, or just like, trying to take over and, become the predominant, not religion, but like, well, I guess religion, he is a god, but the predominant power force on this island, or like the primary belief system. I guess Tao sort of going to the same thing, but in the choice of fanship, I guess, fandom. What about Poni? Does Poni want to go home?
So Poni doesn't really have a solid idea of home. She doesn't want to go back to the circus. She doesn't want to go back to the farm. She could go back to the forest. She just knows that she doesn't want to be there right now.
All right, so we have to talk a little bit about what was going on with, mostly Geyser, but a little bit of Athenos early on.
Yes.
Geyser went right up to these scientists that were operating this crab crawler thing and just ripped their hands apart, and psychically apparently took over one of these legs and got it to scratch around a little bit before Athenos was able to set them down at the city.
The way Daniel described it, it was like all these three operators were like strapped into some sort of unit, and they were like touching and like using their mental link powers, or like whatever the system is inside this crab, to freely ambulate this crab leg situation. Kind of a weird steering setup, all things considered. He was giving us a lead somewhere in that the fact that Geyser can do this is kind of impressive. Where do you think he's going with that?
I have my thoughts, because in our previous interstitial game, Dan has a character whose world has something called psychoglass, an element that naturally moves based on psychic projection. His character from that game was released sort of back to their world with lots of extra knowledge and powers and magic. I'm wondering if some of the things going on here that seem to be psychic are related, if not directly, at least conceptually, to that.
Yeah, and that's something I got a feel for as well, because when Smog and Tao were escorted by the guards, or passed by the guards into that main building, he described some of the weapons as translucent. I was like, oh, that's psychoglass, baby, it's gotta be. Or if not exactly, maybe something very similar to it. So I can't wait to see if he does, in fact, bring that back into something more tangible, or something perhaps the players could wield.
Yeah, Carolyn, I don't know how much we've talked about this. My interstitial games that I ran all had a sort of shared mythos going on. I told as much as I could of it in big chunks to Dan, and I said, if you want any of this, take it. So I wouldn't be surprised if every once in a while, especially Sammie and I, are like screaming in the background, oh, it's that thing!
Oh, we've seen that before! I know you!
How many interstitial campaigns have you run, Alex?
I ran 3.
Okay.
The second game overlapped with both of the other games at some point, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was like a good 2-year run of doing 3 interstitial games.
Okay, that's a pretty good streak.
I wonder what he's going to go in and pluck and see if you did give him all of the notes. it could be just like little like, oh, haha, this is referential, but if he's going to do something substantial with it, I'm very curious to see where that goes.
We certainly did not start out in American TV trope-heavy environment, like with my games.
Yeah, I know Daniel has said that Chrysalis is sort of the hub world. We haven't really gotten into any planetary shifting or swapping to other worlds yet. But this place seems like it already has a lot going on. I'm not in a rush to leave it. Are you guys curious to see what other worlds are out there?
A little bit, but I also want to explore more robot ocean. Okay, we've seen the robot crabs. Where are the robot shrimp, the robot octopi?
I'm really more curious about what the hell did they do to the moon, right? Because, Sierra sort of hinted at it in his drunk rambling at the end there, where, like, there was, like, some sort of rebellion, some sort of revolt, and now the moon has been completely dusted, right? So now they're tidally locked in a way, and the ocean is just sort of traveling in a one blob as the planet rotates, and it's...
Did you see, like, early in the pandemic, there were witches on TikTok who were hexing the moon? Maybe they actually did something in that reality.
Maybe. I mean, magic does certainly exist, at least tangentially.
For me, it's going to be a nice big font to play with Smog, because there's so much shit going on in Final Fantasy with extra moons. In Final Fantasy IV, you have an extra moon that comes along, and it's really basically a UFO. It has one of the characters' brothers, and he has his secret lineage he figures out about. In Final Fantasy XIV, it's secretly one of the biggest summons. It's a threat to the planet if it comes back out. So having weird moon stuff going on is perfect for a Final Fantasy character.
I just wish I knew more about Final Fantasy, but also I don't like the games I have played, so I guess I'm not really a fair judge of that. But I'm sure whatever you pull out is going to be absolutely...
I swear I'll try to make it make sense when we play.
I think the biggest trouble is trying to make a Final Fantasy game make sense.
There are some of them that are a little trickier. There's some of them that I don't even like because they're a little out there, but I do love the series. What else do we need to talk about? I guess if we want to roll back a little bit, the elevator.
Yes, it wasn't really an elevator the way Dan described it. It was, I mean, you could describe it as an elevator. It's a capsule that moves you from one place to the other, but it wasn't necessarily a vertical lift. He described it as you sort of flowing through a current or a stream or something of that nature. And it's Isiri, Poni, and Toroid. And Toroid just trying his damnedest to get these two weird-ass animals to where they're supposed to be. And we're just making his life awful again. We're just talking, we're complaining about things. Hound 5 is still there, but he's just sort of watching everything. And as we found out later, that Sierra can see through Hound 5, at least at some level. So I'm sure Sierra was drinking behind the scenes at whatever shenanigans were going on. Hound 5 starts projecting images of a place that he describes as Earth. Of course, it has, everything we'd expect, horses running on screen. He also projects a lot of fish life, ocean life that Isiri may or may not be familiar with. Isiri takes a moment and looks at this projection of a horse, and then looks at Poni and is like, "Are you sure you're not that? That looks like you." And Poni's just like, "No."
No, Poni's very sensitive about it, and she could kind of sense that Isiri didn't know what a unicorn was, so that was such an opportune time to describe herself as being a unicorn, while not mentioning that unicorns are supposed to have horns.
I mean, yeah, if she doesn't know what a unicorn is at all, you get to lay all that ground up for yourself.
Exactly.
And, she's going to believe you. She'll know if you're lying. If you're not lying and you believe it, Isiri will go along with it. I wonder what her ultimate realization will be if she ever really truly learns what a unicorn is.
After that nice projection display, Isiri had a display of her own.
Yeah, Isiri was fascinated by the projectors, and I believe they were discussing magic with Poni. Isiri's culture, there's not a word for magic. There's just what you can do. It's just an ability, right? a squid can spit out ink. That's just something they do. It's not necessarily like, oh, something spectacular, but, humans, we don't do that. So there's something sort of magical to us about it. But for Isiri, the fact that she can do these things, it's not really surprising to her. Like, there's no special importance. It's just how she is. So she's like, oh, magic, something like this. And she casts this illusion, which is just like glowing anglerfish fangs, and like the room darkens, and there's just swimming like ghost fish essentially throughout. And Torrid just basically wets himself.
Poni was very impressed, though.
Poni was just like, cool, you can do powerful illusions. Pretty soon after that, your two groups met up.
Yeah, and that was an experience, right? Because we're being led into like this guarded room, right? They have like all these biocontaminant like safety hazmat suits on, and Athenos is just like, did I design that? Like, that was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And he's just like, no, absolutely not. So he magics new like luxurious outfits for all of these people who are just trying to make sure they're not being biocontaminated.
Oh, yeah. They were like sexy open robes, right?
Yeah, they're like sexy robes and furs and like, silks and all this stuff. And they're just like, we're contaminated. What?
So because Dex was not around for the next session, they run out and Athenos follows after them saying that he is not finished with their outfits.
I can't wait to see what he does with them.
Smog would have a whole different thing to do with them. He has a very different aesthetic, but still a sense of fashion.
Would it be like a big biker gang or something?
They would look cyberpunk aesthetic to a T.
I love that.
They would have all black and neon. Smog is basically colored like an Xbox and then pink hair.
We did get Smog like a pair of like single lens goggles or something.
How I've described him so far is that he has sunglasses with black plastic frames with green lenses. We're getting close. Part of that interaction was also the start of the ring toss.
Yeah, where Geyser is trying to get some negative energy, just starting their shenanigans, their tricks and everything. So she's like, yes, I'm going to play a game with this horse that I've just met.
She's gonna whap her in the face with a super heavy ring. Poni was able to sidestep that because she thought it was too much like what she was doing at the surface, and she was not about to catch the ring in her mouth like a dog would a frisbee. She specifically let the ring hit the ground, which is just as well because it would have knocked out a couple of her teeth.
Yeah, because like halfway through, Geyser was like, I'm going to make that thing weigh like 80 tons and it's going to like leave a dent in the floor. Fortunately, it missed, but also like unfortunately, Geyser has spread their chaos or her chaos around to all the other players now. But I do kind of feel bad for her because none of her gags are successful, at least yet. She keeps running into problems based on trying to inspire that anger. And I think they have a conversation with Tao at one point that's, why would you want somebody to hate you? And they're like, well, that's how I get power and feel stronger a little bit. Tao's like, I don't think I could hate you.
Well, Tao also had a great point for her, which is she will learn how to push people's buttons eventually. She can't expect to be great at it from the start, especially given how different these people are than the ones she knows.
This is the first time the party's actually truly been put together, so we're all starting to learn each other, what each person is sort of about, and I'm sure we'll have more conflict. But how does Smog specifically feel about all 5 of the other characters now that they've officially met?
So even though he's reverent with Tao, that idea that there's something wrong with their idea of connection to people and what they owe other people being in Smog's mind deity-like has made him consider his own place in the world. What does it mean to have that sort of relationship? There's a lot of like new concepts that Tao is introducing him to. For Isiri, I guess I should say that like this is also colored by what Juice has going on, because I took an amalgam move to represent Smog's little Marlboro companion, Juice, joining the gang. And Juice is very feral and needs to be directed by Smog to be pretty useful. So I think that light relationship from Smog's point of view for Isiri is, you got along well with my pet. You can't be too bad. Like if the dog likes you, it's got to be fine.
Yeah, and I think Isiri is completely enamored with Juice, and I'm so sad that I can't roll for relationships separately for them because they're an amalgam. But like, Isiri's like, oh, I've seen creatures that look like you. You're just a little adorable little thing, and like, if they had cheeks to pinch, they would.
Oh. For Poni, Mastery made total sense. They had that little training bit that I'm sure we'll get into more later because it has to do with one of the titles of the session. Still hasn't really got to have an interaction with the Athenos, but based on what he's heard, we'll probably also regard him as an Esper.
There's only so much you can do with that power scaling without that immediate belief.
Yeah. He's definitely caught Geyser in the little schemes, especially trying to take a physical bite out of Sierra at some point and stopping her being like, you don't bite the hand that feeds you unless you got a way out. Come on.
Yeah, what a bold move on Dee's behalf. Just be like, you know what, this worked once. Let me try it again. And then try to bite an old drunk man.
She was also like, I expect someone to stop me.
True. It's not so much about the physical pain, it's just more about the discomfort, the irritation, the negative vibes being sent out.
But yeah, because Smog is the dark and will be pushing especially the people he regards as Espers more into the darker side of things, I think he sees Geyser as like a rival in that. We're going to push each other to make these people absolutely rotten.
What about Poni? What did they think about the rest of the party so far?
Well, she really liked how Smog took some time out to actually teach her something. She's never had that before, and that was just a really touching moment for her. She doesn't know what to make of Tao. She hasn't really interacted with Tao, but just looking across the room, she can kind of see like, oh, that person can be see-through sometimes. I don't know how to deal with that. Still very impressed with Isiri and her magical abilities. Is kind of split on Geyser at the moment.
I think that's understandable given
Geyser.
Given Geyser.
All right, we have to talk about the magical training session.
Yes, you've been teasing it for a little bit here.
So Smog comes up to Poni and is like, hey, I heard you talking about magic. Everybody can do it, but if you are really a unicorn, you have some innate power. Think about wind rushing by you. And she was like, well, I'm not an alicorn.
Yes, alicorns are the ones that have the unicorn horns and wings. And while they are granted the gift of flight, they do have fewer inherent magical abilities. Yeah, so Poni, when Smog was trying to teach her how to harness the wind energy, she tried so hard, but she did not succeed. It was like she tried to go Super Saiyan, but she didn't have any Saiyan ability. She was just like crouching down, screaming, and then she let out the tiniest little toot, which she did not mean to do.
That's wind magic, baby!
That is essentially some form of wind magic. I don't know if I want to partake in that sort of wind magic, but it is there.
Well, better out than in, as Shrek always says.
I mean, yeah, the Shrek character had to do it.
Absolutely. If anybody else did, it wouldn't have been good.
Wouldn't have made any sense. Now we see what happens when you put Final Fantasy and Shrek together.
Oh, great. I can't wait for that short story to come out.
I hope that is the start of a couple training sessions as we go along, especially because I have an earning experience very quickly with my Link move, and I'm peeking at a move that the Dark has that lets you give +1 forward to someone else if they take your advice. There's no role associated with it, but essentially it's like a free limit break if somebody just follows your advice.
Yeah, but also your advice is going to be questionable, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Because, we didn't mention at the end of this training session, Smog was like, you can do it better next time when you envision pushing your worst enemy down the stairs with the wind.
I just need to know, like, does Poni have trouble going up and down stairs? I know horses generally don't like them.
Horses are able to go up and downstairs. It is cows that can't go downstairs because of how their knees bend. She just doesn't like it because all that walking is hard for her. One step for her is like 2 steps for a regular human.
This is another reason why we need to work on regaining that telekinesis, obviously.
Yes.
So you can move faster and keep up with everybody. Because, like, Isiri can essentially fly, as Dan described it, like in her, like, aqua bubble suit. Mobility might be a big issue going forward here for Poni.
Yeah, Smog can also fly around despite nature of being a Moogle. We got a lot of people with mobility.
Especially across sand, because horses don't have the wide pads like, camels do.
That is true. Like, some Arabian horses can go in the desert and go on the dunes. It's possible, it's just very, very difficult.
That could just be a good motivator for Poni to just work harder too, because everyone else seems to be doing things so easily, so consistently that, they feel a little bit left behind and are upset by that.
Yeah.
How do we feel about the big feeding frenzy that Aura and Sierra gave us?
I am obsessed with that. I was hoping this would go two ways, because Dan sort of hinted that there was like a big dinner or something about to take place. And I was like, either it's gonna be like a super formal, like we're gonna sit down at a table and like everyone's gonna be like really weird and awkward, like a Thanksgiving feast with family you don't like, or it's going to be something very weird and silly, like what happened was where they just crated in all these barrels of various food products and we just went to town, right? Because like Isiri's world is under famine right now, so like she hasn't eaten anything in 3 months, so she's just like, oh, finally something I can eat. So she's as a shark, she takes advantage of that, right? It was good to see Juice sort of join in on that. I think that made her like her even more.
Yeah, Juice is just hanging out in the tank along with the Isiri, bobbling along and like chomping up whatever she didn't like. Had a little burp of bad breath miasma at the end there.
Good thing I don't breathe air.
Poni also got fed. Poni got a trough after seeing like, oh wait, Isiri's getting fed.
Poni took a bite, but she just was not feeling it. So these were definitely plants that were meant to live underwater, and they just had a salty air about them, but it was the wrong kind of salt. It wasn't like salt. It was like wet salt. That's not the good salt.
What's wrong with wet salt?
It's not dry salt.
But like Aura did after that get a nice big trough of good leafy veggies to share.
Yeah, and Smog was like pulling little leaves of it, made his own little salad wrap.
Yeah, Smog is vegan.
It didn't have any sliced apples on the salad bar, though. That was disappointing.
I don't know if this world has apples, to be fair. Like, a lot of the sea creatures that were presented, Isiri did not recognize at all. I can only assume what weird biology has been affected by this tidally locked ocean desert situation, right? You're going hours and hours without any water, and then you're completely emulsified with seawater. That's a terrifying, like the hardest environment on Earth to live in, barring like acid pools and stuff where like only bacteria are tide pools, because they experience such dramatic shifts in, water and oxygen and then heat and dryness. So I wager whatever actual life is out there is very hardy and very weird.
Depending on how abundant this sort of psionic ability is in the world, there might be weird animals that have psionic abilities or have latched on to, if this is psychoglass like we think, moving stuff around. More for Poni to be jealous of.
It doesn't take much for Poni to get jealous, but it does take a lot for her to show her jealousy.
Do you think that jealousy is going to hamper her decision making going forward?
Absolutely, yes. Again, she's not a very deep thinker. So if her first thought is, oh, I'm going to be super jealous about this, she's not going to make the most rational decisions. She will either ignore it or try to take it for herself, depending on if it's something that can be taken.
What sort of choices do you think you would do differently? I don't know, looking back and being given that light link with Torrid, that maybe Isiri would have been so aggressive towards them. I think maybe they probably would have calmed down for a second and asked for more information and more details going forward, but I don't think it really made sense in that time frame. She is going to have some regrets about it going forward.
Poni wouldn't have destroyed Toroid's earmuffs because he's kind of thinking, oh, maybe he does need those to do his job and get me out of here.
One of the nice things about being an absolute edgelord jerk character is that he doesn't have a lot of regrets, at least immediately. Like, part of his backstory, there's a little regret with one character, but he understood his circumstances as he saw them at the time. and he acted accordingly. And if anybody questions that, then they're probably wrong.
We are sort of being put up against authority now. Like, Aura has some sway. It's clear that Powder has maybe more sway with the people who are doing work outside of the city. Maybe Aura has more within the city. And then we've been presented with Sierra, who seems to be this old ocean researcher guy. And then the threat of the captain returning is sort of looming over us as well. This seems to be a pretty big deal in this society. I wonder how all of our characters are going to deal with that authority once we finally encounter them.
Yeah, Poni doesn't really like authority that much. She might not be that willing to cooperate with this Capitan.
I know Isiri, at least, maybe not intentionally, but I can only imagine, given the relationship with mermaids and sea captains of some variety, that things will only end poorly.
Oh, yeah?
Well, we all know that Geyser is going to ask them for a crab strider of her own.
Yes.
Immediately. No matter the context of seeing them.
I just don't know if I want to see Geyser receive a crab strider of their own, because I feel like she will absolutely cause havoc.
She's too powerful.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that, because I was thinking, like, she can only... Well, she could only control a leg that one time. I wonder if she's going to have to learn some amount of teamwork in order to pilot one of these. Like, she's going to get one, but then realize, I have to have the whole group help me. And then how interested will she be in that when Athenos can just pick everyone up and tout them around?
Yeah, I do worry that it might just become like, oh, this was an interesting toy, but now that I can't actually use it, now that I have it, maybe it's going to get thrown a little bit to the wayside. But who knows? Maybe it'll be a lot easier because we're so extraterrestrial to this world.
As far as Smog with the captain, he's already made his stance clear. This is the head honcho of this world who can give me a job and has all the resources. I'm going to cozy on up to them. But Smog has a contentious relationship with authority generally. There's that one side where he's like, I can get work out of you, but it is really like getting something out of someone. That idea of taking something from these people who have all the power and then running away with it, that he's done quite a few times now.
Yeah, I know Tao's pretty excited because this is a big festival situation, so they're having their opportunity to throw a massive concert, and for whatever reason, they've been immediately granted permission to do so.
And hey, maybe Isiri will get on that, because I think we left off with Isiri being like, ooh, I want to figure out what's going on with the music here, too.
Yeah, I want to learn the music here, and that sort of presented us with an interesting rivalry, because again, I have a -2 stat to Dark, so I need Dark Link. I guess this entire session, the dice were just not working, right?
Oh, yeah, we rolled 5 snake eyes between the 6 of us.
I was using traditional dice, but Dan also coded a dice bot, but we discovered there was a little blip in the programming that prevented it from rolling 6s. So across the board, we all just kind of got some lame rolls. And it ended up resulting with Tao and Isiri having Dark Links with each other a little bit, so that now we're kind of rival musicians in some sort of facet.
Yeah.
I don't know what my excuse is, because I was also using the physical die. Just could not get above a 4.
I was using physical dice and got 2 snake eyes back to back, so...
Yeah, I got a set of snake eyes on a couple rolls as well. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, the dice did not like us. It seems like there's something heinous building up in the background because of it, and I'm scared.
Immediately after the session, Dan was like, oh, I bet this is the fault of Ivan. Ivan being one of his vampire characters who is notorious for having the worst rolls imaginable. Now the curse of Ivan has struck us.
Ooh, Athenos? Athenos is going to be completely unimpressed with the captain, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Who is this puny god?
Who is this little man trying to tell me what to do?
How tall is Athenos? Like 10 feet?
So in his truncated form, he's a little over 10 feet, but in his god Gigantamax form, he's about 2,000.
Gigantamax.
Oh my god.
Big boy.
Big boy, and I can't wait for them to return and cause more trouble than imaginable once Dex gets back to the table.
So we talked a little bit about the projections we were able to see from Earth, which seems to not be where we are. We did get to see the actual ocean of this planet for a little bit. Isiri was like mesmerized.
Isiri's mesmerized because this is an ocean she's never been to, right? So that's pretty unusual because in her mind all water is connected, and I don't think she ever really considered the concept of interplanetary space because why would she? The fact that there is water she has not yet experienced is amazing to her, and to see the secrets of the deep is something that she immediately wants to go in and learn and figure out how she can expand her reverence to the abyss and to the ocean herself, and perhaps even figure out what the heck's going on with this moon, because the moon is very critical to all ocean life. And now that this moon is bad and wrong, I think she's going to want to do something to try to fix it if she can.
Right, I completely forgot that upon being introduced to Isiri, Smog was like, Sahagan, praise be unto Leviathan.
Yes! And she was like, I don't know what that means, but thank you.
I was wondering, because of how positively she interacted with it, if there was some creature named Leviathan or a set of creatures that she'd call Leviathans on.
I think she would call the whales a Leviathan, absolutely, because they're just much bigger than, her race of people.
Yeah, it's just the traditional, big water summon or esper in Final Fantasy games. So it's like, you're part of this amphibious people, but you're like a deep version, so you're not amphibious. And you obviously praise this big sea snake thing.
And honestly, if she did encounter it, she probably would, because if it's that much larger and that much greater to her understanding, she'd be like, oh man, that's really cool. The Abyss made that? That's sick as hell.
Well, Smog was also to Poni going yeah, I remember unicorns are sometimes also lesser espers and also got shunted out and made mortal, sort of alluding to what's going on with him with Moogles. So that was his way of relating to Poni. I wonder if Poni took any of that in, or was just like, you said words.
She didn't understand a damn word.
I know you're talking to me, but what are you saying?
It's so fun because I get to use the babble and have it land as babble for Final Fantasy stuff.
That's really good. I think Isiri's a little concerned with some of the words that have been thrown around too, because Sierra, the old gravelly sea scientist guy, he gave a very long speech about revolutions and big cultural change on this planet. But also he was drunk as a skunk drinking this weird, mysterious fluid stuff, and Isiri does not like that because it changes who you are a little bit. And then they go and add this substance back to her the tank that she's been given in order to sort of strengthen her aqua suit thing, and she freaks out about that. She's like, I don't want to be corrupted by whatever pollution you've thrown into this water. What are you doing?
Well, this seems to be that psionic substance that lets you form the water around you. So gives more to our theory that Dan has broken out some psychoglass for us.
I don't know if I want to drink something called psychoglass, though. That's
yeah, it doesn't sound great.
It doesn't sound great, and I know it has more metaphysical properties than actual glass does, but the name does not lend comfort.
It does not.
Now I'm just thinking about Poni getting her hands on something like this and deciding she has magic powers, actually, even though she's been told this is not magic.
Yeah, because this stuff is entirely malleable, if I remember correctly, so she could just hypothetically faction a horde for herself and go to town.
This is the horde that gives me psychic powers. I guess we've talked a little bit around all of Geyser's shenanigans here, but there's a couple we haven't hit on. So we talked a little bit about how she was asking Tao to hate her, trying to take a chomp out of our new friend Sierra, but there's also the incident with Powder.
Yes, where they tried to set up a game for Powder, and it just did not go the way Geyser was intending at all. In fact, I think Powder actually likes Geyser more for it.
Yeah. We got back to the ring toss because as soon as food came out, Poni stopped being interested in that.
Oh, definitely. She hadn't eaten in 30 minutes, you guys. She was starving.
Isiri's 30 minutes, huh?
Oof. And yeah, she tried to do the reverse of the trick where it got too light so it couldn't land on its target, which was, I think, supposed to be Smog's palm.
Yeah, you're trying to throw it around Smog's head. And I'm sure if that had actually worked, Smog would have not appreciated it.
Love to be concussed. The magic messed up. Guys are trying to step in the way to stop it and just got elbowed in the gut.
His poor gut.
Oh, she'll recover. She'll feed eventually.
I hope so, because to be disconnected from like that energy source, it's gotta be really disheartening, right? You gotta reconnect and make yourself feel better at some point.
Yeah, maybe she'll be able to get on stage and do like something horrifying as an act.
Oh my god, don't. They are a clown, a performer. I don't think we need to encourage.
It's okay. Smog isn't going to give her any ideas because right now they're rivals as far as he's concerned. So,
yeah, Isiri. What is Isiri's relationship to Geyser? I don't currently have one. I think I might have spent it, but I know Isiri is like something weird is going on with Geyser, and I don't know how I feel about it yet. They're not necessarily lying, but also like, what is going on with you? What are you trying to instigate? We're supposed to be a community. What are you doing? That's not right.
Can Isiri suss out lies by omission?
I don't know. I think that's a call for Dan, right? As the GM. There needs to be that shift in biology, right? Because the way I've described this to Dan is that their senses are just so like hypersensitive that they can tell those minor, they're basically their own polygraph machine. They can tell your heart's beating a little weirder and your muscles are twitching when you're lying. So their culture just doesn't lie at all. Just wouldn't happen because the bullshit meter immediately goes off. There's no way around it. So I don't know, like, you would have to be pretty slick for a lie of omission just to like breeze by and not mention it. So it could be possible, but I think it might be a little difficult.
Yeah, it would be difficult for another character to do move-wise or an NPC to pull off, possibly. But I think if a GM move happened, there's such a wide berth of things you can do as a GM. You can like temporarily disable one of somebody's moves, let them not have access to it. So that's definitely something that could mess with a series' biology and not allow her to detect what's truth-telling anymore.
I did not know that was a move. Did you ever use that?
Ooh.
Did that with somebody who had that move at some point, and it was in a PvP situation. So suddenly that character was not 100% sure if they could trust another party member in a tense moment. And it was just perfect dramatically.
I love that. That's amazing. I know, especially with our, like, going back to GM moves, with all of our failed rolls at the end, Dan had, like, a ton of moves he was writing down in his notebook. I cannot wait to see the ramifications of our actions coming back to haunt us.
As someone who's GM'd this game before, it's hard to find something that fits right in a context, especially if we roll links at the end. So saving something big and horrible is always nice to get your players just crunching away at what could be going wrong.
Oh, I cannot wait to face the existential dread that is about to befall us.
What do we think is next? We're in our hub world, but what do we think we're going to be doing for like a bulk of the game?
Immediately next is the concert, the Captain's Return, right? So we have to gear ourselves up for that. Within the next couple of hours or so, the ocean is going to flood over us. So I think there's going to be at least some portion of time where we're like somehow exploring the ocean. Maybe that's when Geyser gets their crab. Maybe they're more water resistant, and the party can sort of use that as a vehicle to move around while Isiri's like free swimming or whatever. But going forward, they have mentioned like interplanetary warp, so maybe we will be going to nearby star systems or something like that. Like the teleportation technology we've been experiencing so far is very rudimentary. It's like, oh, we finally got this to work and we're holding it together with duct tape. I don't think it's out of the question for us to be sent to another planet or another moon or something in the star system or in a somewhat close star system, though I don't know what we'd find there.
I am interested to see what it's going to be like when the ocean is above our heads, because we went up in the kind of pod elevator thing, right? Are we going to be above the water or are we going to be below the water?
I think the way Dan was describing it is like the building sort of grew up like a spire a little bit. So I think maybe whatever part we're in might be above the surface as the tide trickles in.
Okay. I want to see what other huge creatures also like come in with the tide, because again, robot crabs are nice, but robot octopi, robot shrimp, robot shark friend for Isiri.
I mean, she has a robot wolf friend, so I can only imagine what other mysterious creatures are denizens of the deep.
Yeah, the thing that's sticking out to me is we were told it was an accident that we were brought along, that they're focal points for their world space travel they're working on. I'm wondering if other things came along with our characters, and that might be what we're exploring as far as different environments at some point. But I don't know where those might have ended up, if they're planet side or if we have to travel in space here because they appeared somewhere else. Who knows?
Yeah, we may or may not run into our backstory NPCs at those moments too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be fun and terrifying given some of the people in a series backstory. Who's your favorite NPC so far?
Well, Hound 5 is my favorite, but Toroid was my favorite to interact with.
Favorite to torture?
Yes.
It's funny because I had no interaction with him in character, but I feel like we've got a lot of personality out of Sierra so far. I love a grumpy, assured old drunkard.
Yes, I like Sierra a lot. Isiri had a couple of fun moments with him where, we didn't talk about this, but Isiri was just you're a grumpy old sailor. I've heard stories about grumpy old sailors. I don't like that. And so she just starts spitting water in his face whenever he's talking. And he's just I guess, and then he just keeps talking about whatever he was talking about, it was nothing.
He's used to dealing with sea creatures.
Yeah, clearly being sprayed upon repeatedly and obnoxiously. But I think personally, I really like Powder so far. Again, the series hasn't really interacted with Powder at all. They're just sort of that sort of crass, brass tack sort of character that I generally really vibe with. I think they're funny.
Yeah, I think she and Smog will continue to get along splendidly. They have a light link for sure.
I love that.
Slight is Smog's worst stat, and he rolled double sixes, so it all worked out.
It's divine intervention, the only good roll of the night.
I think that was at the end of the previous session, but it still feels like an accomplishment given back-to-back snake eyes.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep trying to roll so many dark links with people, because I have -2.
You want to give me experience.
I don't know about that.
Give into your darkness.
No, I am the light. I don't want to. Well, I feel like that takes care about everything that happened. So let's get into the resolution phase, the segment of the show where we each get to say something about the game with no responses. Carolyn, what is your final say on this session?
Toroid deserved better, but he's not going to get better.
All right, what about you, Alex?
Smog has probably met an actual Sahagin before, between all of his Final Fantasy world hopping. Probably another bounty hunter or mercenary, made friends with them. So probably has a decent outlook on what's happening with the series. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Shining Crobat. And I've been playing Pillars of Eternity 2 recently, which has a lot of fun nautical role-playing adventures, if you would like to check that out.
And for myself, Isiri just really wants to get into that transient ocean. I think that's going to lead to a lot of weird, interesting ordeals and challenges that such a fast-moving and aggressively unstable body of water can only imagine. So I think she's going to have a great time exploring and figuring things out. And who knows, maybe something bad might happen because of that curiosity. You can find me in that creepy old castle down the road. Just make sure you knock before you enter, and maybe or may not, I might answer the door. This has been Resolve, an after-play show. You can find us online at most social media sites at ResolveAP.
Except Instagram, which is at ResolveAfterPlay.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. You can buy the game we're playing, Interstitial, Our Hearts Intertwined, from its creator, Riley Hopkins, at linksmithgames.com.
All links will be in the description of the episode.
Thanks so much for listening. We end our turn here, so now it's your turn. What's happening in your game? Tell us all about it.